Full name is Marris Gawiuk. I was born in Scotland, Letham, Angus, Scotland, in 1932 and came to Canada in 1952.
My name is Ronald Gawiuk. I was born in Revelstoke here in 1958, March 2nd, 1958.
My name is Brian Dennis Gawiuk. I was born October 1st, 1955 here in Revelstoke.
The Gawiuks came from Ukraine in 1913. I think it was Dennis's grandfather and grandmother came over from Ukraine in 1913. And they homesteaded down on the southern part of the field here.
The great-grandfather's name was
John.
Tom Koshman, and they came in 1913, and they homesteaded just down here on the flats north of the slough. So that was the original homestead. They lived there, and then during high water, because it was a little bit lower, they were flooded from time to time. So great-grandfather wanted to move, so they were able to move to the south side of the slough. We had chickens, pigs, and cattle on the farm, and small numbers of each. And from time to time, we sold eggs in town, and we sent out the milk. We would take the cream jugs to the station and put them on the CPR train, and they would be sent to Salmon Arm.
We just had a big, huge garden. We didn't sell any produce, we just for ourselves. And the garden was on the south side of the house, down in the lower section there. So we just produce for our own self. So, actually, it was a good garden.
I bet.
I remember the cabbages when we used to clean the cabbages up. There used to be the fence around it, and then when we cleaned it up in the fall, we'd throw cleaning cabbages, and we throw the leaves over to the cows. We had raspberries, strawberries.
You couldn't breathe. You couldn't open your mouth.
They were terrible.
The mosquitoes were so bad. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So actually, we used to burn. The mosquito coils, but we used to get powder. It was coming. Whatever it was, but we used to burn it. We put it in a little saucer, and then let it burn and smolder. But what that powder was, I don't know. But it was just like mosquito coils. But the mosquitoes were terrible. Yeah. These farms were huge, big. They were 600 acres. Some of them. So, but basically around Mount Cartier area, there were smaller holdings, and I would think most of the probably. People had to work off to make a living, but just a smaller type of farms.
Dad's uncle, his Uncle Jack, just lived down the road, and he had a pig farm.
Yeah.
So he spent a lot of time.
Just above Mount Cartier settlement, Trempenaus had a big pig farm too.
Having the dancing or whatever in the back section, like the big cloakroom. Remember laying down on, just on piles of coats and laying down. When you get tired, you just go back there and lay down, and everything else continued.
People were working, so it wasn't much of actually not too much social, just visiting, and not overly much for the socializing. So that's what I remember. So. Yeah, so basically you were working, and if you worked off, you worked like Dad worked 6 days a week.
They had the appraiser from Penticton come in and do appraisals for all the property. They were trying to get a better deal for everybody, and so the appraisers did up a report and going back and forth with Hydro to negotiate a better deal. So when Mom and Dad finally negotiated a deal with BC Hydro. Dad hired a building mover, to move the house. So they came in, and we had to arrange to lift the telegraph wires and power lines at that time, and so that was all arranged, and the movers came down. So it was in June when we moved the house. So the basement, the concrete for the basement was already poured, and here. So the movers came in early in the morning. Ron and I, it was the last day of school for us. So in the morning we had breakfast. The movers showed up. They started to knock the chimney out and pull the south wall over. So they had to fill in the basement a little bit, so with wood and stuff, so they can pull the big beams under. So they pulled big beams under the house, and then they cribbed, and then they jacked the house up, and then hooked the dollies up to the thing, and finally moved the house off the property. They came down, everything was, they assembled everything to lift the house. So when they'd lifted everything up, they were able to weigh the house. At this point they had a system, they could tell how much the thing, and then Ron and I left for school. So then they moved it on, and there was a few pictures that the neighbor took of the move from the farm along the road there to raise the road up to do the work, and they were rip-wrapping just to get in preparation for the flooding. And so they moved backed the house down. So when we came home from school, the house was partly onto the basement.
Actually, it was quite a lean to it, because you could actually when you're walking, you could feel it, because the house wasn't level on the foundation. They still haven't finished the job. So like Brian said, you put something down, it would skid or fall over. So you could actually walk. You can actually feel it when you're walking. So that's how you spent a few nights in there till they got it all leveled off. So they poured the foundation, and then of course they slid it on with the beams onto the foundation. So they're only out at 3/4 of an inch, though. It's pretty accurate. So that's, of course, it wasn't finished at that time. The house wasn't finished. So.
Yeah. So when they moved the house on, then they had to pull the beams out. So there was part of the concrete wall had to be finished later on, and so I had to set fire, to the old log chicken coop and the pig house and the barn, and the old log house, that that he grew up in, basically. So he set fire. So I remember being there with him and having to do. I don't know how what kind of strength you would have, to maintain those buildings, and be part of the construction of them, to have to basically burn them, all the labor that went in and the log house that what the original log house was there. When it was on fire, someone came, I believe from the Boy Scouts, and they thought they had it. There was some mix-up. They thought they had the rights to the house. So the log house, when it was on fire, we were burning it, and I remember, being down on the farm, and there was a big gate that used to go into the farmyard and stuff like that. Remember, we made a number of trips to get things up here. And I remember going there, people just opened the gate, drove in, and they were loading their trunk up with firewood that we had chucked out of the basement. They were just helping themselves. Somebody must have been aware of what was going on and decided they can help themselves and stuff like that.
It was a bit of a scramble, because you were moving and you still had, livestock, so you're just barely you got rid of them, or you sold them, or whatever, because we had no place to handle it at the time, so all your animals were, sold or butchered off, because you didn't have the time to do anything with it. We knew we were being moved. This was in a process of maybe, a couple of years, maybe prior to.
Yeah.
So, but, you had to maybe to actually move the house and everything, basically this summer period of time. They were moving up the valley from Sidmouth Arrowhead this way. So, they were moving out first. So as they worked up the valley, that's how they worked. So you could see them, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, months, you could see them burning, slash and everything. So that was how they just sort of worked their way up the valley. So that people down south moved first.
I remember going down to the farm, and there was an old stump, a huge tree that Ron and I don't know who else, I think cousin, we had dug a hole from one stump into this bigger stump, and we had built a big fort. It was big ladders inside. What would it look like, if you still had the opportunity to continue to live. It wasn't our choice to move. It was
But we were
the
just
decision
lucky
was made first.
we were just lucky we had hired ground. That was it. We had the hired ground to move the house to and carry on like that. But it was not a nice time, no.
No, because if you moved from one place to another, you could always go back. In this case, everything was obliterated. You had, virtually, you had a tree there. It was gone. So, you had no memories. Everything was just wiped out. Just obliterated. So, it was, it's not the nicest thing. So we were, a little bit luckier than that. So we had ground, but to buy, even when they were bought out and paid, you still didn't have too much to buy, But we had a little bit more acreage. We had 80 acres. Yeah, 80 acres. We had two.
Yeah.
So that we had, a little additional acreage most. So, but no, some of the smaller places they didn't get much at all. So.